Hello, everyone. My name is Flavia Sterciuc, and I'd like to introduce my mother, Leah Sterciuc. She is a wife to Ben, my father. She is a mother to me and my sister, Flavia. She is a grandmother to my two girls, Flora and Olivia. She has 2 degrees in interior design. She has a master's degree in theology. She is also currently a world-class endurance athlete. She runs marathons, ultra marathons, triathlons, Ironmans, including a Deca Ironman, which placed her as the fourth American woman to complete a Deca Ironman, and the seventh woman in the world to complete a Deca Ironman. That's 10 Ironman in 10 days, by the way. And she's also a world-class traveler. Mom, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being willing to share a very vulnerable story. And I just want you to know I really appreciate it. So thank you for being here. Can we start at the beginning? What is your first memory of Romania?
First of all, thank you so much for having me here. I'm truly humbled by your kind introduction. I am honored to be your first guest and to congratulate you and to say that I truly admire your courage to embark on this endeavor. Interestingly enough, nobody ever asked me that question. I really had to think about it. My first memory that I can recall is spending winters at my grandma's house and being so cold. She would warm up bricks in the oven and she would wrap them in towels and she would give them to us in bed to warm up our feet. So I remember sitting with my sister in bed and taking turns with the hot brick. So those are the things that I remember.
Can you tell us about your childhood and your teenage years growing up in Romania under communism? What was everyday life like?
I was a very quiet, shy, and awkward child. I was a lot alone. My school schedule prevented me from hanging out with other children very much because they were such, the school was very small. So we had to go in shifts to school. Mine would start from noon until 7 p.m. I recall walking from school in the dark and the power grid was turned off to save electricity. So I remember holding my breath until I would get home because I was so scared of walking alone in the dark. But yes, I was the child that had the key around her neck, and I would make my own lunch, I would make my own breakfast, I would do my homework, go to school, come home. Very predictable, very typical childhood.
And what was your family life like?
My family. Uh, Very quiet, very unadventurous family. My mom was the brains of the family. She had connection, she was creative, that's why we made that somehow. My dad was the heart of the family. He was very artistic. He had a very hard job, but in his spare time, he would paint. My mom was an accountant for a bus company, to put it, and my dad worked in a steel factory. All their life lived in the same city, worked the same jobs. They retired from those companies. That's all they did. My dad would go to work, come home, place his easel in the common room, and he would paint. And that was his hobby. My parents and I, we were 4 siblings. We lived in a city called Alba Iulia, which is in Transylvania, in the heart of Transylvania. Our life evolved around church and work. Church was mostly the environment where our friends and their friends were. My parents never left the country. My parents never owned a passport. Literally, everybody was overworked and lived the life of survival, constantly food, was mentioned in our discussion. It was a constant worrisome. What we would want to eat, what we want save for tomorrow. Everything that we had on our table, it was rationed. I remember going with a card to get the bread and punching a hole in the respective day and knowing that I cannot get anything else beyond that. All we talked about was, what do we do tomorrow? How do we make it tomorrow? The question, how do you see you in 5 years, that was never asked. Or what do you want to be when you grow up? Those are not questions that were mentioned at our dinner table. Dreams were drowned in daily chores and daily toil. So life was very simple, limited to basic necessities.
What was life like as a Christian in a communist country from what you can remember?
We were labeled as different. I never went for a sleepover. I never went to a birthday party. We didn't have a lot of friends outside the church. You had the stigma you on you, so it was difficult at school, but at church it felt free. Our friends were at church, were the only friends we had. Kids didn't necessarily want to associate with Christians because it was against what the country was standing for.
Did your teachers treat you differently?
Yes, but you know, preparing for this, I was talking with your dad and I was telling him about my childhood and I was feeling so sorry for myself. And like, I never had a birthday party. I never had a cake with candles. I lived such a simple life, and I was having a pity party, and then dad listened and listened, and all of a sudden he said, you know, I wish I would have had your childhood. So by comparison, I shouldn't complain. But when I see your children, the life they have, and so yes, it was very limiting being a Christian in a communist country. I didn't realize it then because it seemed normal. You accept it as this is the life. But living here now, I realize how many things I missed during my childhood because I was a Christian.
Which you are now reliving through my children, which is probably a really awesome experience for you. Um, Speaking of dad, can you tell us how you guys met?
I went to school to a different city, to a medical high school. The school system is different in Romania, so even high school is specialized in the direction you want to go. So I was studying to be a dental technician, and that was not available in the city where I was born. I went to school in Arad, and this is a city close to the Hungary border. And that's where I met Dad in the Romanian church.
And what did your parents think of him?
Well, my parents were not exactly thrilled because your dad was not only very young, but he was very poor. Came from a large family, so he didn't have any means. So the match didn't look promising to my parents. So they were not thrilled about it.
What drew you to him in the first place?
His resilience and his calmness. He seemed such a steady guy. I tend to be an emotional roller coaster at times, so I was attracted to that calmness, and there was a certain sadness about him that I didn't know why, but his eyes were very sad. So the more I got to know him and I realized his background, and the more I loved him.
What was your first year of marriage like in, being 19 years old, super poor. I remember my first year of marriage, our issues were communication and learning how to share things and, these little things that us in America struggle with. Your struggles were obviously very different in your first year of marriage. Can you tell us about that?
First year of marriage was very difficult. We moved, after we got married, we moved in the city where I was born, Alba Iulia, to be closer to the parents. Dad worked a very difficult job at a train station. He would leave in the morning at 4 a.m. and he would return home after 10 p.m. because in the evening he would go to school. So he would not be drafted in the army. That was one way of postponing the inevitable. So he enrolled in school for that. So we barely saw each other. We got pregnant immediately with you. So I was very anxious about that. How we'll make a living. Food was a constant struggle. We will take turns who goes in the morning at 4 a.m. for the milk. And sometimes I would go and place my bag with the bottles in line, and I would go home and sleep for another 2 hours, then go back when the store would open. I learned that people do that. They would just place their bags with the bottles. You had to take the bottles. They would fill them up with the milk. You couldn't just go pick milk. We never had fruit and vegetables in the house. I remember Dad and I craving honey, and that's one item. If you come in our house now, we probably have 6 or 7 kinds of honey because we did not have honey when we were in Romania. It was a luxury item. We never seen a banana. Orange was a contraband item at Christmas. Eggs were luxury. Everything else, we had a card with the amount each family should have. So we were only 2 people in our household. So sugar, rice, oil, everything was, you go once to the store, they punch a hole in your card, and you're done for the rest of the month. You're on your own. So our love and excitement of being married was soon choked by all these worries and all these daily struggles. So we had a lot of arguments.
I cannot imagine. Do you remember the first time he told you that he wants to escape the country?
Yes.
What was your initial reaction when he first told you?
The first time he mentioned that to me was after you were born.
Wow.
He really struggled with you, bringing you into this world that we were living in. It's one thing for us to struggle, but it's another thing to bring a child in that world. And he said all the time, he mentioned, I want Flavius to do better, to have better. So the first time he mentioned that to me, I was no. That's all I could say. No, that's not possible. We cannot do that. The risk was too high. So he let it go for a little bit. And I think after he finished his schooling, he graduated, if I recall correctly, and then he brought it up again because we were struggling. He was miserable in his job, especially in the winter. Things were not improving at all. It almost felt like we wouldn't make it as a family if we continue, if nothing will change. That's how he felt.
So what happened next after Did he go for it? What was the conversation like the night before he left or the day before he left? How did that happen?
He was taking regular trips to Arad, which is a city on the border. He would take the train to go to Arad, and initially it was for business. He would make some extra money to help us survive. But the more he went, the more information he would gather about people that were successful in their endeavor to cross. And the more I think he solidified his conviction that he has to escape. And he convinced me. Of course, he didn't tell me the danger. He didn't portray that as an easy step or an easy journey, but by no means he ever told me that it's life and death. In the center of the country where I lived, Alba Iulia, nobody escaped from there. Most people that escaped lived on the border of Romania. So I didn't have any stories. I haven't heard of anybody that escaped, that made it, or so it was very unusual for somebody from the center of the country to escape. I had one request for him, not to tell me when he leaves. I didn't want to know. So he was going often to the city on the border. And every time he said goodbye, I didn't know if this is the time or he's going to come back. He's just going to go gather information, set things in motion and coming back. I just didn't want to know. So in 1988, I'm sorry, I don't recall the month right now, but he left for a trip to Arad. We said goodbye. I had a feeling that this is different, just in the way he said goodbye, but I wasn't completely sure. And then he didn't come back home. And the past never stayed more than 2 days. So once the 2 days passed, I realized that this is it. He escaped. And another week went by. I did not hear anything. Another week went by. I still didn't hear anything. My parents kept asking me. I didn't know what to say. That was a very difficult time. I didn't know if he was dead or alive. And I think after the third week, I given up hope. I didn't tell my parents anything. I didn't know what to say to them.
So, what was the next contact with him? How did you find out if he was successful or not? Or
I remember that day like yesterday. We were walking from my parents' house, and we always took the long route to get home just to kill some time. I was holding your hand, and we were walking to our apartment, and I looked in the mailbox, and in Romania, all the mailboxes were at the first floor, line up, all of them. Nobody had the lock. As I was telling you, there is no mail in Romania. Unless somebody writes you a letter, you don't receive a mail. No bills, no, everything is paid personally for electricity, for water, for whatever you go in person and pay. There is no junk mail. There is absolutely nothing. The only time you receive something is somebody writes you personally a postcard or. So I rarely open the mail. There is nothing, nobody would write me anything. There is nothing to receive. But that day I opened. I do not know for how many days that card has been there, but I opened the mailbox and it was a postcard with no image whatsoever, just our address and written in pencil. It was from your dad. He was letting me know that he is in prison in Timișoara and that he is well and doing very well. And if I want to come and visit him, these are the visiting hours. And his signature, just Ben S. Later, he told me they were told what to say, and it had to be an open-ended, open card, so and pencil, so they can edit whatever they wanted to. But that's how I found out where your dad was for the past 3 weeks.
Wow. What was your initial reaction? I mean, you're holding your 1-year-old's hand, and then you get a letter that your husband is in prison.
We went inside, I closed the door. I had nobody to tell. I couldn't ask for help. Nobody. I couldn't tell my parents. I just couldn't. There is no lawyer to call. There is no place to call. I didn't have a phone, first of all. Like, would I call the prison? Hey, how is my husband? Tell me. No, you can't do that. Nobody gives you any information. You look across the room and this 1-year-old, and I'm 21 myself. It's like, you just feel like the world just collapsed on you and you have to do it on your own. We stayed inside the whole day. And then I have to see him. That was the first thing that came to mind. I have to see him. I have to convince myself. Then I start thinking, what if this postcard is a lie? What if he's dead? What if he's not there? So my mind started churning and churning. And like, I didn't have any money. I didn't know anybody, but I have to go there and see him. So I remember 2 days later, I talked to my mom if she can watch you. I took the train to Arad, and I had one friend there in a church, and he was willing to come with me to the prison in the next city, Timișoara. I was afraid to go by myself. I've been such a sheltered child, living such a small life, and all of a sudden I have to go visit the prison. For me, it was... And one thing that I remember to this day is that it said, if you come and visit me, bring cigarettes. In that postcard, Dad never smoked. That's like, it never dawned on me that that's how naive I was, that's a contraband item. That's...
Oh, for trading.
Yes, that's a commodity in prison. My first thing is like, oh my God, Dad needs cigarettes? Like, your dad needs... I never purchased cigarettes in my entire life. I would never went in a tobacco store. That's Christian, don't do that. So I remember going to Timișoara, arriving there, and I said, I have to go and buy cigarettes. And I purchased them. I went to prison. I was so nervous. I went there and I said, I'm here for visiting hours. I would like to visit my husband. Thankfully, there were another 6 or 7 women visiting their relatives. So they lined us up against the wall. I remember staying in the sun for about 3 hours. Just you couldn't move, waiting your turn to... And they go through everything that you bring. I was trying to bring him some food or some... They made me take all the cigarettes out of the packages right there on the sidewalk. I had to take every single one out of the package and dump them all in a bag because they didn't want you to hide things in them. I never knew that. I remember sitting there and crying. I'm 20-year-old. What am I doing here? Taking cigarettes out of a... And then they called my name. It's your turn to see your husband. So I was placed in a row of chairs, just like any, and the glass in front of me, and I waited and I waited. And the man that came, it did not look like your father. Oh God, he was almost transparent. They shaved his head. He lost so much weight. He was a shadow of a man. He had so many bruises. But the thing that hurt me the most were his eyes. He was so afraid. I never seen him look so afraid. Every time somebody walked behind him, he would jump. Every time a door closed during our conversation, he would jump. Like he couldn't focus on me. All the time his eyes was wandering, all the time to like self-protection. The conversation, I don't remember a word of our conversation. We had, I think, 5 minutes, but I do not remember the conversation. Just nothing flowed. It was just chopped, and I was glad that he's alive. But I didn't, how can I help him? What can I possibly do? He didn't know what his court date, he didn't know what his sentence would be. He didn't know anything. There's nobody to ask, no. So he was just in prison waiting. He didn't know what for, but nobody wanted to give me any information. But I accomplished the fact that I knew that he's alive, and that's all I accomplished on that trip.
How many months was he eventually in prison for?
He was 6 months in prison. And at the end of the 6 months, he was brought to court. I wasn't aware when that was, nobody told me. And I think his sentence, because it was his first offense, it was 6 months in prison, and the rest he had to do by working without being paid to pay his dues to society. So I think the rest of his punishment was another 6 months to work without receiving a salary.
How did you survive those 6 months without him? How did you get food on your table, food for me? How did you manage?
I looked for a job so badly. Nobody would hire me. I bribed so many people to find a job. I couldn't find a job. We were behind electricity, we were behind on rent, we were behind on everything. We never owned a fridge, so I can say that I would open a fridge and I would look what's in the fridge. We never had a refrigerator. We never had a washer or a dryer for that matter. Our pantry was empty all the time. I'm grateful for my parents. I would go there, take you in the morning. We would watch our little sister, my little sister, because mom and dad would go to work, and they had a child later in their lives, she was very Iwana, my youngest sibling. She's very close to your age. So since I didn't have a job, my mom said, you can watch your sister. So thankfully, you would have your breakfast there, and you'll have your lunch there. And I knew that 2 meals a day are secured for you. And dinner, we will make do. All I can say is that I was so skinny. I was a shadow. I think at one point I was under 90 pounds. That's how skinny I was. It's not necessarily just food, but anxiety, worry. There are so many factors that affect your well-being. So it was rough. It was rough.
And when Dad came home after 6 months, what was it like, his re-entry into society, into our family, into the community? How did you guys navigate all that? I mean, I'm sure people were talking. I'm sure your family wasn't happy with him. I mean, how did you guys handle all that?
I remember coming from my parents' house, and Dad was at the front door waiting for us. He came earlier, and we weren't home. He didn't want to come to my parents, so he just waited until we made it home. He was so skinny, Flavius. I cannot put into words. He was skin and bones. He was never a big man, but he was just skin and bones. He would wake up in the middle of the night and he would be drenched in sweat. We couldn't, to this day, we cannot have an alarm clock. If he hears alarm, he panics. That was the sound in prison to wake up. It brings back so many memories, and PTSD was a real thing. We didn't know what it was. We didn't know how to call it. His re-entry was very difficult. He was an embarrassment for our family. It was an embarrassment for the community, for the Christian community, because he was in prison. He was a convict. He was an embarrassment for the city. The secret police, which is Securitate, I was called then, they had us under constant watch. Dad would have to go weekly to sign to make sure that he was not allowed to leave the city, first of all. Secondly, every week he had to go and sign to make sure that he's there, so they know that he is in the city. They would watch our house all the time. They would come in the middle of the night and pound on our door, and they would pick him up, and they would take him in the car and beat him up, and then they will bring him back. They will, in the middle of the day, they will take him and they will beat him up all the time. He was an embarrassment from the country. They called him a traitor. He couldn't find a job, and that was the condition of his release from prison. You need to find a job so you can pay your dues to society. That's your punishment. But they would call ahead everywhere where he applied. The secret police will call ahead, do not hire him, because they really want to throw him back in prison. So we couldn't make ends meet. Absolutely. Finally, he was able to find a job, which was terrible conditions, but it was a job. And at the end of his 6 months, he said, I cannot live this life, and I'm gonna attempt again. Fully knowing that the second time, if he's captured, it means life in prison.
Did you want him to escape? Did you resist? Did you tell him no way? How did you react, and what did you say to him?
I don't really recall, Flavius. I don't know why did I agree to that? I do not know, honestly. I just want to, maybe I was numb. Maybe I was fed up with all this too. Maybe because now, thinking clearly as I think now, I said, no, I should have said no. Of course, no, you can't do that. You already tried once. But you're just numb. And the daily struggles bring you to the point where you said, yeah, it's worth the risk. Maybe we were younger, maybe we had more courage, or I don't know. But in those moments, during that time, I felt like there is no other way.
And was it the same process the second attempt? He didn't tell you when he was gonna try, and he just said goodbye one day? And
yeah.
So what happened from there? How did you hear if he made it or didn't? And
this time I found out sooner, 2 weeks after he left. I received a phone call from him that he is alive and well, and he made it across. I didn't know where across. He didn't tell me. I didn't have a phone, but my parents did. So he didn't tell me where. We knew that our phones are tapped. They were listening to our conversations. And so I didn't know where he is, but it was enough for me to know that he made it across. Where across, I didn't know, but anything was better than Romania. So that was a glimmer of hope.
Did the secret police come looking for him at all
Yes.
after those 6 months of the work sentence? What did they react when he wasn't there?
When he didn't show up to sign the weekly sign, then they came to our house. They harassed me constantly. I cannot tell you the fear that I had from them. We would come home. I was holding your hand, and the secret police were on our doorsteps. I would be afraid to open the door. I would literally leave the building. I would go on the street, and if you want to talk to me, you would have to follow me in the street. I was constantly nervous. I knew I'm watched constantly. They knew who's coming, who's going. They watched us every move. They constantly asked me where your father is, and I would say I do not know. And literally, I did not know, but they didn't believe me, and they would constantly threaten me. Do you want us to take you in? We have other methods of forcing you to tell us where he is. Like, I do not know where he is. He didn't tell me anything. And that's one of the reasons I didn't want that to tell me, so I can, when he leaves. So I can honestly say that I do not know he is.
How often would you speak with him? Was it by telephone only? And
After that initial first call, when he told me that he's okay, I think a month later was the first conversation, real conversation that we had. And I found out that he is in Austria at a time. I didn't know what it took for him to get there. But, and then since I didn't have a phone, we scheduled every Wednesday, once a week, every Wednesday at a certain time. I would be there and he would call and we would talk for about 5 minutes. So those are the weekly phone calls, and he will always talk to you. I would give you the phone so you can hear his voice. But that was Wednesday, usually at 6 p.m.
what happened next? At some point you guys had to make a decision. He can't be there in Austria by himself forever, with his wife and son in Romania still. So what were the next steps that you guys decided so you can be together again?
With the limited conversation that you can have over the phone while you know that somebody's listening, we realized that through legal channels, it will take about 10 years for us to be together again. So initially, you are so relieved that he's alive and well, and he's not captured and rotting in some prison. The 10 years doesn't seem a lot, but as the time goes by, 10 years is a lot. If you think about it, not to be together for 10 years. Being in a refugee camp, you hear a lot of stories. So he was aware that if you pay certain people through money, you're able to bring your family. They know routes, and you can bring the rest of the family. And through the Red Cross, the children are brought to the refugee camp in 2 to 3 months, which shortens the time interval a lot, if you think about it. Of course, it's a risk for the other member to escape, but there is always the assurance of these people that do these things, that everything will be fine. Will bring your loved ones, and all you have to pay $3,000, $4,000 for this. So slowly he planted this seed in my mind that if I attempt to escape, we'll speed up the process. We'll be together as a family sooner, and also it will increase our chances to immigrate together to USA, because when you go before the immigration officer, going as a family unit, gives you a greater chance to be granted a visa as opposed to a single man.
How did you guys come up with the plan? Um, what did your parents think when you told them? Because you would be leaving me with them. How did that come to be?
I didn't come up with a plan. Ben came up with a plan, knowing somebody that's what they do. He put me in touch to two other friends of his from the church. They were relatives, they were cousins, and they were willing to take me with them and to go to a town on the border. From there to hike to a river and swim with the river. The river would cross in Hungary. So that, and there somebody would wait for us and they will take us to the Austrian border.
How did you guys come up with a plan, and how did your parents react when you told them that you want to escape?
The plan was already in motion, and these two friends of dad's from the church, they were already thinking of escaping, so they allowed me to join them, and that made me feel a little bit comfortable because I knew them. So I said yes, not fully knowing what entails, but I said yes.
And your parents?
I told my parents what I intend to do. I didn't tell them the route. I didn't tell them the details because they're frightening even to me. I couldn't even say them aloud to myself. But I assured them that in less than few months, you will be brought through the Red Cross to the refugee camp. And this is the quickest way, the only way we can be together as a family. Something that will not take a decade to be together. They were not thrilled. They were not thrilled for me because they didn't want me to risk my life. And you're also a burden to have another. What if something happened to me? There would be another child to raise. And it was not a decision I took lightly. I have to say that I agonized over the decision a lot.
And who was going to take care of me if both of your parents were working? Who was actually going to watch me while you were gone for a few months?
My mom. My mom said that she would give up her job and will stay home.
Wow. Would you mind sharing the story of your escape and that whole night? How was it when you hugged me and kissed me goodbye, not knowing if it was a few months or forever?
I tried to last night, as I was preparing mentally for this interview, I was trying to go chronologically through the events. It was so difficult even to think about it. To say it out loud, it's even more difficult. The only way we made it here is because we suppressed all those memories. We didn't know about therapy. We didn't have money for therapy. So the only way we survive here, if I really close the door on all those memories, and now all of a sudden to be asked to open the door and talk about them, it's really hard. I even tried to write it down. I couldn't even write it down. Some things you forget, but then you start thinking about it and deep memories just reappear, images, feelings. Last night, as I was thinking about it, I got cold instantly, like shivering cold, because that's how the entire night was. So I remember that I dropped you with my mom. I say goodbye to you, and you're very nonchalant, like I'm just gonna go and buy milk. You you could not tell the difference that this might be for a few months, or I might never see you again, or I was angry. I was so angry that I live in a country that puts me in this situation. I was angry at myself that I didn't do better in life. I was angry with your dad that I didn't have money. I was angry at everything. I was just, no mother should be put in that situation to make that choice. But you're so happy playing with my little sister there, and you could care less that I left, or you're just happy it was just a normal day for you. So I left. I went to the train station. I met those two other guys, dad's friends. We hopped on the train, and I had to pack very non-suspicious because every time you travel to a town on the border, they will check your bags. Why are you going? Who are you visiting? All these questions, because they're just suspicious of everything. So I had to make sure that I packed books, anything that would make it sound like I'm just gonna go visit somebody, not attempting anything. So we made it to this town on the border called Nudlak, which is right on the border with Hungary. We visited somebody from the church. We arrived there around 8 p.m. And I remember that we had 2 hours to get ready. So besides the clothes that I had on me, I packed in a bag another round of clothes, dry clothes, a pair of shoes, a pair of pants, undergarments, a shirt, put them all in a bag, and my identification card, put it all in the bag, taped it the best I could, and tried to trap as much air as possible in that so I can float better in the river, because swimming was not conducive to escaping because it's not quiet. So you pretty much have to float to try to make the least amount of noise possible. So I taped it all, and with the belt, put it around my waist, and we headed out in the dark. It was raining. This was the end of October, and it's very cold in Romania in October. In some places there already snow. So we head out the door in the rain, in the dark, and we had to hike. We hiked about 3 miles to the river, constantly quiet, following this guide that was taking us to the area where I was overheated, and the idea of jumping in cold, freezing water was freaking me out. We arrived to the banks of the river, and one of the guys that I was escaping with was a doctor, and he said, "Roll up your sleeves." Like, what for? You're gonna get a shot of adrenaline, because jumping in this cold water can give you a heart attack after hiking. And I remember I was almost laughing hysterically, like, that's gonna kill me? How about being shot while being in the water? How about drowning? How about hypothermia? How that's gonna kill me? But you're so numb and you just do what you're told. I rolled up my sleeve. I remember he gave me a shot right there in the dark. Then he pushed me in the water, and he was next, and the other one. I just remember that I couldn't breathe. I couldn't regulate my breathing. I couldn't take a deep breath for a few seconds. And then you feel the current drags you. Mureș is it's a big river in Romania. It crosses from Romania all the way to Hungary. Strong currents, a lot of people drown in that river. So I was nervous. I was not a swimmer. I do not know how to swim. I did not know how to swim. And yes, I said yes to that. How crazy is that? Thankfully, my bag was keeping me afloat. So you just let the current drag you. That's all we had to do. The current will take you in Hungary. That's all you had to do. 6 to 7 kilometers and you'll be in Hungary. That's all we were told. Well, how hard can it be? Well, it is hard. The water was so cold. I remember my legs were numb, my arms were numb. I literally thought I'm gonna die. I thought I'm gonna die right here. I'm just gonna be a corpse just dragged all the way along the river. In some places the water was so shallow they will just scrape your knees. In some places it was so cold and you feel so deep and you feel immediately the temperature changes. It was so cold. One of the guys, we couldn't see him anymore. I panicked. What happened to him? I kept saying, "What is your cousin? We have to wait." No, we can wait. The current takes us. There is no way we can wait. Immediately, I kept repeating, "He died, he died, he died." I kept repeating it to myself. How? I'm next. You can yell for help. You can get out, because if you can get out, if you get out, you put in danger the life of the person next to you. If I get out, I'm gonna be captured for sure. So you just let yourself flow. Let yourself float down the river, fully knowing that I'm gonna die. I honestly I thought of your dad. I thought of you. Those faces made me hold on. Oh, the choices one is forced to make in this life. Very hard. This was very hard. It haunted me for a long time. But I stayed in and I kept holding on. I wonder how many kilometers. Maybe we're there, maybe we're there. And the current suddenly started dragging us close to the shore. And I was freaking out. Like, maybe we're supposed to get out. Maybe we're there. There are no signs. There are no... And I tried to move towards the center, but the current was so strong. And we got too close to the shore, and there was a flock of ducks all huddled together for the night. This was around midnight. All huddled together on the shore, sleeping, and we disturbed them. And they start flopping around, they start making noise, becoming very agitated. And after that, the whole hell broke loose. And a foxhole right next to the shore, there were the patrol soldiers buried there. And all of a sudden, because of the ducks, they spotted us. Flares go around, machine guns, yelling, shouting, dogs barking. I cannot describe those moments. It's a shock to the system. I felt myself picked up, dragged through the mud, face down in the mud, and I remember a boot on my neck and being kicked and punched, and the friend next to me, the same thing was happening to him. I was so cold. I was so cold. I was shivering. I was holding my jaw because I thought it's gonna break, like I couldn't control it anymore. Dogs everywhere. And I mean dogs. I mean huge black dogs with bloody eyes, drooling. They're trained to kill. And I remember this dog with his paws on my back, and I literally would hear the breathing of labor breathing of the dog. And after they got tired of beating us up, they made us sit on the edge of the river, and they started asking us how many more. And I said, no one, no one. And every answer, they would punch you more. They they wanted you to say there is somebody else, we kept saying no one, no one, and the beating went on for a while until they got tired of it. And since nobody else was on the river, they put us in trucks and they took us on the main command post on the border. And there, the interrogation continued under the dreaded fluorescent light. But I couldn't answer any questions. I wasn't able to talk. I was just so cold and hypothermic that I couldn't answer anything. And eventually they gave me clothes, prison garb, and they told me to go and change. And this is the part that I'm gonna have a little difficulty saying it, but there's no place to change. So they gave me a room to go and change. And I was trying to move as quickly as possible and change, but a bunch of guys came at the door. They start banging on the door. They wanted to come in to take their turns with me. I remember this was the third floor because I opened the window because I was ready to jump. I do remember that they were banging on the door and they were fighting at the door, and there was nowhere to escape. I remember that room. There was one desk, a chair behind it, and one window. So I opened the window and it was an inner court, an inner brick court, and a Romanian flag in the middle. And I was sitting on the sill of the window. And I was telling myself, if one comes in, I'm gonna jump. And that lasted a few minutes. And eventually the door opened and this older officer walked in. I learned later that he was the command of the post. He was in command of the post and he lived nearby. And he was informed that some escapees were captured tonight. So he came and he was kind enough and told all the guys, all the soldiers to leave. But that's how I made it. And he stopped all the interrogation, this older officer, and he put me in a jail all by myself. So I sat in a corner in a jail cell, and I had the front seat an entire night in a prison as they were bringing in people that tried to escape that night. I've seen horrible things, Flavius, horrible things. I was trying to make myself as small as possible in that jail corner, but I'll never forget this. They brought this family, 4 sons and their dad, an older gentleman. They tried to escape on the same route that we did, and they put him on a raft. They put their father on the raft and they pushed him down the river, and they captured them. When they brought them in, they were beating them up, but the father, in front of their sons, they were beating up the father in front of his sons. So cruel, so cruel. The sons were begging the officer, like, beat us, leave our dad alone. And at one point, they let a dog attack one of the sons. I will never forget those screams. I will never forget those images. That's why I'm afraid of dogs. There are images you cannot erase, no matter what you do, no matter how many miles you run, no matter how many mountains you want to climb, no matter what you do, forget. There are images that stay with you for the rest of your life. So that was hell. I have no other word. It's what hell looks like when all humanity is gone. That's what hell looks like. So in the morning, they loaded us in another truck and they took us in the next city, which is Arad. And they put me in another prison, another cell. And I didn't know anything. You can ask. I can have my only one phone call. What phone call? No representation, no lawyer, absolutely nothing. You're just thrown in prison, and nobody, if you ask a question, you're gonna be slapped for it. So you just wait, and you do not know what for. And I think I was there for 3 days. I haven't eaten anything. I think they gave me water. And after third day, they called my name. They put cuffs on my hands. They put cuffs on my legs. And I come to the front. And the secret police from Alba Iulia, the one that were harassing me, were waiting for me there. I dreaded that. I saw the evil smile and I knew this is going to be bad. Basically, they were taking me back to Alba Iulia to be processed and be persecuted in my own city. That's their jurisdiction. That's how things worked in Romania. They put me in another truck. I didn't know if we're driving all the way to Alba Iulia. I didn't know anything. And this guy didn't climb in the truck next to the driver. He came in the back with me in the bed of the truck. And he started beating me up. That I'm ruining his weekend, his family. It was a Sunday by my calculation. That because of me, he cannot spend time with his family, but he had to take the train all the way from Alba Iulia to pick me up and take me back. And I'm a traitor, I'm this and that. And with each swearing and with each anger burst, he would punch me. He knocked me over my head all the time. But we made it to the train station. I was grateful for that. At least I'm not going to be in a truck with two guys all the way to Alba Iulia, trained. Their people can abuse me in a public setting. This already in the evening, he took me to the train station. I remember because I went to school there. I went to that train station so many times as a student, going back home, back and forth. And now he took me with chains on my legs and on my hands all the way to the train station to make an example out of me. It was so humbling, so humiliating. I was 21 years old. How dangerous could I be? I was treated as a criminal. And he took me back at the train station by the train tracks where people work and fix trains. And he chained me to a post of a chain link fence. And he left me there. And he went to have dinner and drinks until the train would come. So I remember staying there for hours in the dark, all by myself, chained to a post. I think 2-3 hours. I needed to use the restroom so badly. I remember that. I was so thirsty and hungry, and I just felt like this nightmare will never end. But eventually, the train came. He took me, put me in the train, chained me to the seat. He couldn't hit me, but he talked. Oh boy, he talked. And he talked in my face all the time. Abusive words. We made it to Alba Iulia. It was already like 2 a.m. He put me back in local prison. He put me in the local prison and he went to spend time with his family. In the morning, they processed me and they took me before a judge. And this is where things start getting better. This judge was an older gentleman. I think I looked horrible. I think after so many days of being beat up and not eating, and I had so many cuts on my head. I was bruised. So he took one look at me and he asked me how old I am. I told him I'm 21 years old. And he said, "It says here that you have a child at home." Yes, I do. He asked me, "Do you want to go home?" All I could do, I just started sobbing. I just started crying. I couldn't say a word. So he said, "This is your first offense. You're a mother. You're young. I'll let you go home. I will not put you in prison, although you deserve it. And your punishment is to work. You'll be condemned to 1 year of labor without being paid." So that was one way in communism to make up for your sins. Labor camps. Just that I would not be incarcerated in a labor camp. I would go home at night. But those are a way of... Within 2 hours, I had my identification card. I had to sign as a convict. I would have to go weekly to sign, just like your dad did. I could not leave the city, all these things, and I need to find a job within 2 weeks. If I do not find a job in 2 weeks, I'll be put in prison for a year. Within 2 hours, I had my identification card. They gave me my clothes. They gave me some civilian clothes. And they opened the gate. You're free to go. I remember walking, I think it were 2 miles walk to my parents' house. I walked in. You were asleep. It was noon. You were down for your nap. So it was Ioana, my sister. Both of you were taking a nap. I just sat on the floor next to you and just cried. I told my parents what happened. Of course, that I told you so, and I heard it all, but I kept my mouth shut, and at the end of the day, I took you by the hand and we went home to our apartment. And then I never mentioned the fact that the third person, cleverly or providence, I do not know, stayed behind. And while they were busy beating us up in there, he floated right by us and he floated into Hungary. Yes, Dad told me later that they met at church the following Sunday. And that's how Dad found out that I was captured, because I was not there. So Dad was devastated, because he knew what happens when you're captured. He went through that, and he was really nervous for me. But at our Wednesday usual call, I told him very brief, absolutely no details. I told him that I'm home, I'm okay, everything is fine, do not worry, we'll make it through this. That was my unsuccessful attempt to escape Romania.
So you had 2 weeks to find a job. How did that go? I know you said earlier that they wouldn't hire anyone that's a convict. and you also had a 1-year-old. Uh, what happened?
I was able to find a job, the lowest of the lowest jobs possible, which is in constructions. And in the winter, it was really rough. It was mixing concrete. But I had a job and I was not in prison. The events of the revolution changed everything, and there were such uncertain times, and situation changed from a minute to another. So finally there was news on TV. Prior to revolution, there was nothing on TV to watch. I think we had 2 hours in the evening. That's all. The rest were just patriotic songs about our glorious leader. But other than that, there were just 2 hours of news and some music, and that's it. So finally there was 24-hour coverage. So we would go to our neighbors, and all the neighbors together would watch TV, and that's all we did. Also for protection, people were afraid to be by themselves in the house. I remember one night the shooting was so relentless that I was afraid for our lives. So I took you and we spent the night on the floor under the window, just in case a stray bullet might find its way in our apartment. And after that, I moved in with my parents. I was too afraid for the two of us to live alone. And I remember that one evening, it was announced on the news that you can apply for passports now. Nobody in Romania owned a passport. If you travel to Bulgaria or Hungary for a day, and you get a card, a pass, but it was a 24-hour pass, not a passport. So the next morning at 7 a.m., I was at the police station asking for a passport. And I remember saying that, yes, you can get a passport, but you need a $10. $10. They didn't want the currency of the country, they want dollars. And I could not find an entire country $10. That's how you get a passport. I had to travel to Arad to find somebody that would have the $10 bill. But I got it. I went back. I took our pictures. And you didn't have your own passport. You're too little, but they put your picture on my passport. And we got a passport. I think it took me 48 hours to own a passport. 48 hours to own a passport. I kept looking at it every 20 minutes. I keep looking. I can go anywhere. So on Wednesday, that calls the usual call. How are things doing? Everybody's safe? Yes, we are safe. We are doing well. We moved in with mom. Don't worry about us. And then I said, I don't know how to tell you this, but I can come to you. I have a passport. I remember this quiet for a few minutes. It was quiet, like nothing on the other end. I thought he doesn't hear me. I said, Ben, we can come to you. We can. This was Wednesday. After a long time, said, okay, be here Friday. And in spite of my protest that I can't pack my entire life away in 2 days and go forever from this country, he was insisting. Actually, he told me this: if you're not here by Friday, don't come at all. I remember those days. So the next day we had 2 luggages. One I put only books. I do not know why, but yeah, in one luggage I put only books, and in the other one I put some clothes for us. I closed the door. I gave the key to my mom from our apartment, and we went to the train station, and we got on a train, just you and I. And We left the country for good. Remember when we crossed into Hungary, because they come and check all the passports, and when you leave Romania and cross. And I was looking at that strip of freshly plowed border that I was willing to die to cross that, and now I'm crossing it with a piece of plastic. It's just, I was nervous, I was scared. Just the two of us on a I never left the country. Now I'm crossing in two countries, just you and I in the middle of the night. We didn't sleep at all. We were too nervous to sleep. You're so worried that somebody's gonna steal our luggage. All night long you're watching our luggage and make sure that it's there. And we arrived in Vienna in the morning. People start getting off the train, and you and I were still sitting in the train. I wasn't sure if it's this Vienna, what is it, am I supposed to get off? And we were still sitting there. And I think I heard steps on somebody was running inside the train, and he was your dad. He had a beautiful bouquet of roses. He saw that we're not getting off, so he hopped on the train and started looking for us. You recognized him immediately. You did. I didn't think you would, but you did, and it was wonderful. For the first time together in a long time. It was a good day. It was a very good day. We got off the train, and he was making so many excuses, and he was apologizing that he doesn't have a hotel for us. We didn't have any money. He didn't have any money. He took us to church, the local church, and we slept on the floor in the local church with other refugees. That's where we slept. We slept on the floor for the first 2 nights. But during the day, we walked in Vienna. You had your first Coca-Cola. Just holding Dad's hand, being together, and although we couldn't afford to buy anything, but just walking the streets and not looking over our shoulders. And then on Monday morning, he took me to the refugee camp, but we had to stay 10 days on quarantine, you and I. So they took us in. We stayed with other thousands and thousands and thousands of refugees in a prison. The process was unpleasant. I was interrogated. They wanted to make sure that my reasons for seeking asylum are valid, that I'm not a fraud, I didn't complain any of it. I accepted anything that would help us to go where we wanted to go. So after 10 days, we were free to go, and the waiting game started. The 3 of us as a family, we tried to live our lives the best we can, but all the time we waited for the visa, for the answer to be granted a visa to go to United States. Dad was trying to find work the best he could. I was working as a maid. We were trying to make money, save money when we arrived here. So that was a year and a half.
How did you eventually get to the U.S.? What was the connection?
We had to go before a immigration officer, and you plead your case, and you hope that they will grant you a visa. And after that, you wait for the answer. And one day came in the mail, and I think we had 2 days to be at the airport. So the kindness of private churches from here, I think it was a Catholic church that paid for our tickets. Other than that, we just showed up at the airport, first time on a plane, never been on an airplane before. We got on a plane and we flew to New York, and from New York to Seattle. And this is where we stayed for the rest of our lives to this day, Seattle.
Wow, what a journey.
Yes, I think I should mention that when we received that envelope, and it was, yes, you've been approved, you have to be at the airport at this hour. Dad immediately had a nervous breakdown. It's been a long journey for him to receive that, from the moment he was captured to all the years. That's what you wait for, that's what you hope for. And when it came, it broke him. He was just laying down, sick. I had to do all the packing. He was absolutely numb. I remember Hugh got really sick as well. I remember we were running through New York airport for our connection, and you were throwing up as we were running towards the flight, and I can't explain to you what it meant for us, that reply and that visa. You know, people always say that God is a God of second chances. I always say that God is a God of new beginnings. And that's what it meant for us. It didn't mean a second chance. It meant a new beginning, clean slate, a new life, new world, our chance to start over. That's how we looked at it. We didn't look, okay, now we have another chance to make it better. No. Dad and I literally blocked everything that happened prior. The moment we came here, this is new life, this is new beginning. I'm gonna block all those men until I can deal with them. In the meantime, it's fresh start, and that's how we looked at it. That's the only way we could have made it.
I'm not even sure what to say. I yeah, I'm forever grateful for you guys, for your journey, your struggles. It's given my family and the next generations like so many more opportunities that realistically we would have never had. And so, thank you. Let's take a breath. Let's take a breath. Okay. So now that you're in the US, that's a whole new season of struggle because you're immigrants in the US now. So what were your first few years in the US like? You don't speak the language, you have a 3-year-old now. You're trying to find work and trying to start a new life, like you said, a new beginning. So what was that like?
It was difficult, but it was hopeful. So the difficulties were language barrier. That was rough. But it was hopeful. We had hope. We were together. So that changed everything. We were so grateful, and we never saw ourselves as victims. We saw ourselves as warriors. We made it. So any difficult that came our way, we can do it. We're together, because we would look back where we came from. So any obstacle or any difficulty that was ahead of us paled in comparison to what we've been. So yes, it was rough. Yes, we didn't always have food. Yes, but we lived in a country where we weren't afraid. Nobody was watching our house. Nobody abused us. You know, everybody was kind here. But we were not victims. We didn't feel entitled to anything here. This country took us in when they didn't have to. we are let down by our country. But they took us in, they adopted us, and we decided as a family that we're going to do the most out of this fresh new beginning, and we're not going to waste any chance to to make our life beautiful and to contribute to this society, because we are truly grateful that they adopted us. So it was hard. It was hard not knowing anybody, isolation. But you find beauty in things like we were going to the mail, junk mail. I was reading it like it was Christmas every day. I would see my name there in the corner. Somebody knows I'm here and is sending me all this mail. Like, it was beautiful. I didn't know that everybody gets that, but I took it as an, oh my gosh, they're welcoming me. Welcome to the neighborhood. Here is your coupon from Kmart or Safeway. And I was so grateful. You People are kind here. We are treated as equal, not as immigrants. People were patient with our English being our second language when we stumble over our own words. They're gracious, willing to help, but we worked hard. We worked hard. Dad and I, we worked a lot, and we went to school at the same time. Dad would go to school in the morning and do even night jobs, janitorial jobs during the night to provide for us, ESL classes on the side. We worked hard constantly to make it.
I think that's such a powerful message that more people nowadays need to hear, not feeling entitled to everything. And just, I think more people need to just realize that we need to be more grateful for what we have in this country. Freedom is a privilege. So I really appreciate you saying those things. I think in light of the political climate and everything that's going on in our world, I think that's just so powerful. As we're nearing the end, what's your family life like now? You've been in the U.S. 33 years. Um, you have a nice big smile on your face. What brings you joy, you know?
I am overwhelmed with gratitude. We have a wonderful life. We have wonderful children. We have 2 children now, you and Flavia. We have a daughter-in-law. We have 2 beautiful granddaughters and 1 on the way. So our family is enlarging. We have every opportunity, every door is open if we are willing to walk through it. We are able to go to school, to create a business. We have employees, give jobs to other people. We're able to impact people all around the world. I'm just grateful, just grateful. I love the life we have. I don't deserve it, but I'm grateful for it. I am truly grateful. And although there are, once you cross into the darkness, there are some areas of your life that will be forever in the dark, will never leave you. But in spite of all that, there is beauty in life. We can go past all the hurt and all the pain and all the bad memories and have a wonderful life. Yes, the demons visit you once in a while and the memories are creeping in at times, but we found ways to deal with it. We know our triggers and we can live a normal life. We support each other. We talk often. Even last night we went for a walk and he said walking is our therapy. That's how we deal with things. We go for a walk and talk. And it helped a lot. It helped a lot. And if I really think about it, any other arbitrary turns along the way, I will be elsewhere. I will be different. So I'm grateful even for the painful past. It empowers me. It made me feel like I survived it. I did it. If I could do that, what else can I do? That's how I look at it. I refuse, like I mentioned before, I refuse to look at this happened to me and I'm a victim now. No, I'm looking at it. I survived that. Somebody else imposed that on me. Somebody else created those, but I survived it. I pushed through it. So it is empowering. Maybe that's one of the reasons I run. It helps me. When people ask me, why do you run? It helps me. It helps it clear my mind. It's so cleansing for me. It's empowering. How many runs I use them as prayers. And I say, thank you, God, for giving me this opportunity. Like what I can see with my eyes, where I can run. It's such freedom. It's a choice. That pain is a choice I can take. That's why I can take ultra running. I choose to put myself through that. What I went through, it wasn't my choice. So I'm grateful for this life. We want to squeeze every ounce of life out of this, and every day is a gift. I'm grateful that we're together as a family. Every time we have a dinner together, or we were willing to die for this moment, to be together. So I never want to take that for granted, being together as a unit. It means everything to us. That is the reason we did what we did.
Well, Mom, thank you again for taking the time and sharing your story. It's incredible. Your resilience is and your strength is just incredible. And I want you to know I really appreciate you going to that place of reliving all that. I hope you know that it's going to inspire and motivate a lot of people to just be more grateful for life and just living here in the U.S. and just being more grateful for what we have. And so I thank you. It really means a lot to me, and I hope you know I love you, and I'm forever grateful for my family, for what you and Dad did, and I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, first of all. And in many ways, you are the reason, you were what inspired us to pursue this new world, because we wanted to give you a better life. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for having me as your first guest. And always remember that you come from a strong line of warriors. You are one strong man, and I love you very much.
On that note, thank you for watching, and thank you for listening to Pursuit of Freedom. If you have a story you want to share, please let us know. We would love to help you share it. Thank you.